And at 10, The Joker. Mad Love is one of the most beloved episodes of Batman the Animated Series, but the story of the episode was first told in the show's tie-in comic, The Batman Adventures. The story provides an in-depth look into Harley Quinn's origins and the full extent of her relationship with the Joker. After her anniversary plans end up being thrown out the window by Mr. J, she decides there's only one way to win her Puddin's affection: capture and kill Batman. And she succeeds, but the Joker isn't happy. If anyone's going to take Batman down, it's going to be him. And so he lashes out at Harley once again, leaving him alone with the Dark Knight. The two fight, but Batman's able to use Harley's successful scheme to his advantage, taunting the Joker that she came closer than he ever actually has to killing him, and concluding the jab by calling him Puddin', which is one of the funniest things I think Batman has ever done, because, you know, he's usually like a brooding and dark hero who refuses to kill despite all of his darkness, but I mean, like, come on. He called his greatest enemy by his girlfriend's pet name, and that's probably one of the best Batman moments ever, but it's still a stupid way to beat him, if we're all being honest. And at 9, Ultron vs. Thanos. Ultron vs. Thanos is an idea that we've been asking as comic fans for a while. However, this question was actually answered thanks to the Disney Plus series What If. In the 8th episode of season 1, we got to see what would have happened to the MCU if Ultron had won and gotten into the Vision's body. If the heroes had failed to steal it and put Jarvis's code inside, Ultron would have wiped out everything, apparently, using the Mind Stone and his vibranium body to decimate everything and everyone, until only he remained. However, it was certainly easier to do this after Thanos showed up with the other 5 Infinity Stones. We expected a climactic and epic battle, but instead, what we got was honestly pretty realistic. Ultron as Vision simply says fascinating and then uses his Mind Stone to slice Thanos in half, resulting in him collecting all the Infinity Stones at once, and then just ruining everything else, showing us that the worst mistake in the MCU was killing Vision before Thanos showed up. And at 8, Reverse Flash. A pride point for speedsters, especially evil speedsters, is how fast they can move, how they're faster than a speeding bullet, and how they're basically impossible to hit. So imagine our surprise when Reverse Flash ends up getting popped in the head by none other than Thomas Wayne in the Flashpoint timeline, so Barry could access enough Speed Force to save the world and bring his son back. Well, bring Thomas's son back. And while this apparently killed Thawne, that was far from it. Thawne started vibrating so fast as he could actually slow the destruction of his brain, and this actually gave Thawne more time to try and avoid death, and gave him the ability to hold the grudge. Humiliated by getting killed by Batman of all people, Thawne sets out to be even worse than usual, even ripping up the letter that Thomas gave Barry to give to Bruce, the only contact that Bruce had with his parents since they had died. Well, the only contact a living version had, which is absolutely brutal, okay? Batman was ugly crying. It was kind of weird. But I mean, come on, a speedster getting shot in the head, it's pretty dumb. And at 7, Thanos. Remember when Mysterio said, now that is an Avengers level threat? Well, luckily he didn't say that on Earth 57780, because on that Earth, home of the Super Spidey Stories number 39 from 1979, because in those pages, against the efforts of Hellcat and Spider-Man to thwart him, Thanos attempted to seize the Cosmic Cube. However, Hellcat intervened by kicking the cube out of Thanos' grasp, inadvertently sending it into an adjacent alley where a young child stumbled upon it. Despite Thanos' persistent attempts to reclaim it though, the two heroes successfully prevented his retrieval. Consequently, it comes as no surprise that a number of heroes have risen to oppose him. However, his most humiliating setback occurred when, in these pages, he was apprehended by the NYPD. That's right, the New York Police Department captured Thanos. This particular incident may have also attributed to the fact that Thanos was brazenly flying around New York City with a helicopter emblazoned with his name, so we kinda, you know, knew that he was there, virtually just like inviting arrest. But still, Thanos was arrested and lost that way. What the hell?
Number 6. The Nipple Suit. Batman relies heavily on his tech. His Batsuit is probably the most important of that tech. It's highly advanced in terms of super suits, and it's constantly being improved and added to. Sometimes it gets a tech overhaul to battle a villain, like the Zebra Suit. Sometimes it will get a redesign to better personify where Bruce is at in his life, kinda like the Zur-En-Arrh suit. But of all the suits donned by Bruce Wayne, one stands above the rest, and all it took was the addition of a pair of nipples. In both Batman Forever from 1995 and Batman and Robin from 1997, the director, Joel Schumacher, decided that he wanted his heroes to emulate human perfection, and so he was inspired by statues of Greek gods and heroes. This is why both of his Batsuits worn by Val Kilmer and George Clooney have a shiny, muscle-adorned physique, and of course, nipples. It's really a very small detail, and if it wasn't for a close-up shot of just the chest and its extremely prevalent nipples, I might not have even noticed. But when you realize they are there, you realize that no other superhero has nipples built into their costume. This one is just iconic.
Number 5. Nightwing, red suit. Oh boy, the New 52 was a time of reinvention for a lot of characters, but then, on the other hand, it was also a time of radical change for pretty much, in most cases, really no reason. Which is kind of what happened to poor Nightwing here, because the New 52 was supposed to be giving us fresh new takes on characters. DC decided to completely revamp his look by going from his classic blue to red, which really seemed to serve no purpose that I can see myself, other than to be a very different color than the one we're used to seeing Dick wear as Nightwing, because well, I mean, it's very different. I mean, red has always been more of Jason's, or I would say even maybe Damian's color in my mind when it comes to former and current Robins, and even after donning this new suit, it was almost immediately discarded as Dick Grayson's secret identity was revealed, prompting him to change his hero name from Nightwing to just Grayson, and ditching the suit as well with all that change. So really, what even was the point of this?
Number 4. Black Condor. When Black Condor first popped up on the scene in DC Comics, his choice of garb was interesting. Richard Grey Jr. gained the power of flight from being exposed to a radioactive meteor, though he believed he had developed flight naturally after being raised by a flock of wild condors. Yes, really. So clearly there is a level of, how should we say this, creativity here. Like, he came back into society and then took someone else's identity while also being a costumed hero, and I think his superhero costume perfectly exemplifies how utterly off the rocker this guy actually is. Richard took to wearing a cape that draped out under each arm, being attached to his wrists with bracelets giving the semblance of wings, because he can fly. Get it? I'm sure that could probably have had some kind of effect on his flying, but the rest of the getup is kind of a mystery. Essentially, he wears a neck collar thing that looks kind of like a hood that connects to his big chunky belt with one piece of fabric in the front, and he accompanies that with some short shorts and some really ornate looking boots. Those are really cool. And that's kind of it. Luckily, later iterations of the character took their look in some much more cooler directions, but at first it was kind of weird.
Number 3. Emma Frost in Humans vs. X-Men. Emma Frost's look following in Humans vs. X-Men is something that I think is dumb, because I kind of think what happened to her character in that story was kind of dumb. Although, as someone who really enjoys Emma and enjoys her, in more of a hero role, it makes sense that I would feel that way. People who might be more fans of Emma in a villain role may have actually kind of liked what happened with her character in this story, and honestly, if you like it, that's fine. But I think either way, we can all agree, regardless of what this costume represents for the character, that it is objectively a pretty terrible costume. It honestly makes me think of what Emma cosplaying as Penance might look like. This mainly black look was one Emma donned near the end of Inhumans vs. X-Men, after it was revealed that Emma had, basically been manipulating the X-Men and mutant kind into fighting against the Inhumans. It also featured a combo Cyclops and Magneto style helmet that also kind of reminds me of Professor X's Krakoan era Cerebro helmet look. While the helmet may work on those other characters, it just doesn't really work for me with Emma. I just feel like a helmet for her is a weird choice.
Coming in at number 2, it's Catwoman. The history of Catwoman's look is a long and honestly incredibly kind of odd story. Over time, she would go through a number of looks until it eventually became a leather suit which had a more practical vibe, matched with a pair of cat eyes goggles, and it became the character's most popular costume, with later redesigns all primarily retaining the key elements of that suit. But in the very beginning, Selina Kyle was just a woman in a green dress that was also a thief. That kind of checks out for the comics at the time, and it also felt kind of unique in my opinion. Compared to all the other zany villains, she kept it rather low key, but that wouldn't last. Eventually, in 1940's Batman number 3, Selina Kyle donned an orange costume with a cape with the super great addition of a terrifying full cat face mask. This was basically like a mascot's headpiece, but a bit smaller, which I'm sure made it more practical, but for me, it's utter nightmare fuel. I don't know what it is about animal heads on human bodies, but I am not here for it. Basically, she kept the dress element that she started with, but now, it was orange, with an incredibly high popped up collar, and it was combined with a huge reddish orange cape and tiny little blue heels for added comfort. Then she topped it all off with a terrifying full headpiece, and now I have to watch videos of puppies before I go to sleep at night. Thanks a lot.
Number 1, the real Lobo from New 52. The real Lobo, oh boy. New Lobo, who dis? Although there have been quite a few New 52 redesigns that I've discussed on this series of lists where we talk about dumb costumes, Lobo probably takes the cake here. The whole new look he had when he was revealed as the real Lobo in the New 52, the first version to appear was initially said by this Prime Earth Lobo to have been an imposter, was so different from the original and so serious that it completely ruined the character for a lot of people. I will say I do think this design is objectively pretty cool. Like, I think this character looks great, but it's not Lobo. This doesn't No, just not for Lobo. For Lobo, this is objectively ridiculous. Number 10, Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie suit. Spider-Man's 2021 hoodie costume is definitely an odd one. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this one didn't bother me myself too much. There are parts of it I actually kind of like. I actually really like his shoes, but I do know people who pretty passionately felt that this look is ridiculous. And I'm including it because I value the specific person's opinion who actually even mentioned that to me, and I think they made a fair point for why it was so silly, so I'm going to indulge. The Spider-Man we are talking about here is of course Miles Morales, and the look we're talking about is the one he donned before this current look that he's in right now, which is kind of a return to more of his classic look. I like to call this specific look though his hoodie costume, although to be fair that's a little confusing because he has another hoodie costume, but anyways, hoodie 2021. It basically looks like he's wearing a hoodie with leggings and of course sweet kicks. Of course I will say this costume looks super comfy, which for me makes more sense than some of the other things that superheroes are known for wearing, but it also greatly deviates from his normally sleek design, which is I think what was missing for most who weren't fans of this look. While it is a bit goofy looking, especially with the leggings, which I gotta say I kind of agree, kinda wish he had looser pants to kind of match his hoodie, this costume was actually made by one of Miles' friends as a replacement, so at least it also had a reason for existing in the story. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us and you love talking about all the dumb, weird costumes by giving this video a thumbs up. I love dumb costumes. Number 9, Wonder Woman's secretary look. Forget the old. The new Wonder Woman is here, and she is depowered and working as a spy and business owner, baby. The kind of Wonder Woman you probably never really asked to see, but the 70s gave it to us anyways. Admittedly, the actual fashion sense of this look is pretty great, I gotta say. So although in some ways this is kind of dumb, I also feel like the actual fashion, amazing. And I mean all around throughout as well. But the fact that it comes with Diana not having her powers anymore is pretty tragic, which is why it's going to make our cut. Even though this was done in an effort to actually promote feminism at the time. The revamp was actually intended by the creative team behind it to encourage other women to strive for independence and was actually pretty well executed, I gotta say. Even though taking away Diana's powers would in retrospect be seen as a downgrade for the character in regards to her history. Which is why this makes our cut, even though I understand what they were trying to do was not that, but it unfortunately ended up being seen as a setback as opposed to a move forward for the character. Number 8, Martian Manhunter. This was really the only suggestion I got from the comments on our part 2. People were saying that we never talk about male characters in skimpy outfits and how those are dumb, and Martian Manhunter was one of the ones that was suggested. And I do agree that Martian Manhunter does have a weird outfit, but I also didn't know too much about his outfit and what it means. So I decided to look into it. And as I was expecting, while this outfit does look pretty ridiculous with Martian Manhunter's little shorts and his X-straps over his bare chest with his long flowy cape, it turns out there is actually a reason behind it. So it kind of does make sense. Martian Manhunter being a shapeshifter, it's as I expected, and apparently his clothes are actually just him because he's a shapeshifter. It's just a weird thing to think about. His suit therefore is something he chose to shapeshift into, and it seems to be inspired by the heroes around him. Martian Manhunter in his normal form actually looks more alien even than we know him to look, and is a little bit more spiky. And so his appearance on Earth is actually him trying to stay true to his Martian heritage while still shifting his appearance somewhat to to look more humanoid, so he'll be more accepted, and he makes himself look like he's wearing clothes that he feels makes him look heroic, as that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a hero. So if you think Martian Manhunter dresses weird, it's really kind of a reflection of how Martian Manhunter sees most male superhero costumes and just superhero costumes in general, and maybe the way that we see them. In fact, I definitely see inspiration in his look from another alien superhero, Superman. You know, with his green skin and his little booty shorts, which sometimes are like little briefs. It's kind of got a Superman vibe to it a little bit. Number 7, Susan Storm's cutout suit. Oh boy, this is a 90s classic in some of the worst ways, I think I can safely say. Now, I love a woman in a sexy costume, but this one is a lot, even for me. And what's worse, they made it narratively so that Sue designed this one herself, which feels not right for the character, but hey. If that feels pretty out of character for Sue, who refers to feeling like an old frump in her previous suit, you're not alone in thinking that, by the way. Many people like to defend this costume by actually saying that narratively its creation makes sense because it came from her evil persona Malice, actually, who was still possessing and influencing Sue at the time, and that this is actually an indicator of that. Well, this might be true. I'm still skeptical as to this being the real reason outside of the canon for this redesign. And even if that is the only reason she had this suit, I still don't really like it, because as a Sue Storm fan, it doesn't actually come from Sue herself, but from Malice, who was controlling her at the time. Which I know Malice is kind of like a part of her, but it's like the evil part of her. So there's really not as much agency here for Sue.
In its 6th, Darkseid. Bruce Wayne was not taken seriously by Darkseid. As a matter of fact, Batman uses the element of being underestimated to his greatest advantage. Batman does not kill, but he was forced to do so when Darkseid threatened Earth. The only known substance that can kill a new god is Radion. So Batman shot Darkseid with a Radion bullet and himself died in the process. Darkseid, for that matter, had Batman as the last person in mind that could stop him, because he thought if anybody would, it would be Clark. So yeah, up until this point, the only human or sentient being, for that matter, that had truly made Darkseid, the god of evil of the DC universe, cowering and running away in fear, is Batman. So yeah, there you go. Batman killed Darkseid by shooting him. Halfway through, into number 5, Squirrel Girl versus Galactus. Okay, I know you all love Squirrel Girl, but come on. I get that there's a whole series called The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, but this deserves to be on the list. This is a little much. The solo series debuted in January of 2015 and ran for 8 issues, but then was relaunched in October of that same year as part of Marvel's all new, all different branding, and was continued to be published until November of 2019 with 50 issues, for a total of 58. Both series were written by Ryan North, but in issue number 4 of volume 1, Squirrel Girl literally stops Galactus from coming to Earth by being friends with him. Come on, okay? You can't sit there typing telling me that this doesn't make this deserving of that list, okay? Like, she didn't even have to fight him, for God's sakes. Okay, that's stupid. You're just gonna talk the Devourer of Worlds into not devouring a world? What? No, that's not how that works. The waiter at Olive Garden can't stop me from shoving more bread down my throat, so how could you stop someone who's literally eating planets? And like, I get that you all love Squirrel Girl, but come on. I know that suggesting anything is gonna make people mad at me, but still, Squirrel Girl beating Galactus. No. Okay? No. It's nuts. In it for Justice League. The Justice Buster Batsuit is a mech suit that's part of Batman's Fenrir Contingency, which is a suit designed to take down the entirety of the Justice League. Making its feature appearance in Batman Endgame, the Joker used his virus to warp the brains of the Justice League members at the beginning of the plot. Batman was then forced to use his Fenrir protocol to eliminate his teammates before it was too late. The suit was successful in eliminating Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Aquaman, but met an even match at the hands of Superman. After a lengthy fight, they were trading blows. Superman tore through the armor and nearly killed Bruce, which would have been realistic. Until Bruce used, and I kid you not, kryptonite chewing gum to spit in Clark's face, rendering him unconscious. Come on. Okay? Like, imagine waking up to learn that you passed out because Batman spit in your face. Like, seriously, dude, please. Like, I get that we're post-COVID, but like, this wasn't post-COVID, okay? He literally kept a piece of chewing gum in his mask. He says that he keeps it in the helmet so that he can chew it and then spit it like Clark. Dude, like, okay, sure, you had miniaturized red suns on your knuckles, you had Greek supernatural weaponry, you had super fast servers and electromagnetic nerve trees for Flash, but chewing gum is the thing that takes Superman down. That's like Green Lantern being taken down by a number 2 pencil. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Cobalt Blue. While in the comics Malcolm Thawne is the long-lost twin brother of Barry Allen, he is also Cobalt Blue, one of a number of evil speedsters of the Flash that wielded the blue flame. In the Arrowverse, however, Cobalt Blue is Eddie Thawne, who is brought back to life by the Negative Speed Force in order to make him their avatar. Spoiler alerts for the series finale of The Flash, by the way. Okay, you've had enough time. To erase the Reverse Flash from the timeline, Eddie shoots himself in the heart as he is a direct ancestor of the Speedster. His death created a paradox since Eddie did not leave behind any children to continue the Thawne name. So Eobard, aka the Reverse Flash, is never born. The paradox, though, also caused a wormhole to open up and start expanding, pulling Eddie's body into it. Then in the final season, it is later revealed that Eddie was resurrected by the Negative Speed Force in 2049 to become its new avatar. He originally worked as a scientist at Mercury Labs known as Malcolm Gilmore until he was struck by a red lightning bolt from the Negative Speed Force, mimicking Barry's origin story. However, the way his storyline ends, again, Flash season finale spoilers, is by Barry convincing him to let go of the hate and remaining the Negative Speed Force avatar. They also have a climactic battle with all of the past Speedster villains that lasts like 2 minutes and then they all disappear. So yeah, Barry literally beats the Negative Speed Force talking to Eddie. God. I love The Flash, but come on, jeez. Penultimately, and at number 2, musical. And no, this isn't about Music Meister, because within the pages of Final Crisis, utilizing her legendary lasso of truth, Wonder Woman releases Darkseid's consciousness from Turpin's body, and despite being physically defeated, Darkseid's dying essence continues to drag the entirety of reality towards annihilation. Time and space crumble as the catastrophic effects intensify until only Superman remains. Engulfed in darkness at the culmination of existence, he struggles to replicate a machine known as the Miracle Machine, an apparatus that's capable of granting wishes, which had been revealed to him by Brainiac 5 during his journey to the future. Darkseid's essence resurfaces, coveting the machine, but Superman ultimately obliterates him by employing his last reserves of superpowered breath to emit a harmonious song, countering the vibrational frequency of Darkseid's life force, ensuring his ultimate demise. Yeah, Superman sang Darkseid to death, and if that's not stupid, I don't know what is. And finally, in at number 1, Batman vs. Hulk. Talk about one-sided fights, right? Okay, like Batman standing up to Superman is one thing. They're within the same universe, he can get kryptonite, he's rich, I get it. Shockingly enough, Batman seemingly achieved the impossible feat of defeating the Hulk as well in the days of 1981 when DC and Marvel were still on friendly terms and the concept of separate universes hadn't really established yet. They occasionally collaborated on crossover stories, such as what unfolded in DC Special Series number 27. Written by the late Len Wein and illustrated by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, in this extraordinary encounter, Batman unexpectedly crosses paths with a rampaging Hulk, who had been manipulated by the Joker to see Batman as an adversary. So, the Hulk saw Batman and, kinda got mad and attacked him because, adversary. So, Batman, recognizing his immense power, somehow evaded every single one of Hulk's blows because even one of them would kill him instantly. And then, somehow, with calculated precision, he drops a pellet of knockout gas, which disoriented Hulk, and then somehow, Batman kicked the Hulk in the stomach, which made him inhale the gas that then knocked him out. So yeah, that's right. Batman kicked the Hulk in the gut and actually made him flinch so bad he had to inhaling gas that made him pass out. Yeah, that's also pretty damn stupid, but I'm not sure.
Number 10, Wolverine's Patch Disguise. Wolverine's Patch Disguise. Okay, bub. So you know I'm a big Wolverine fan, and if you follow me elsewhere on the interwebs, you may also know I'm a big Patch fan. However, even I, a major fan, can acknowledge how ridiculous this look and disguise is. While the Gambit miniseries we got recently did help to justify Gambit's kind of weird costume choices, the Patch miniseries definitely did not do that. Although that miniseries, written by Wolverine writing legend Larry Hama, which takes us back in time for an untold tale from the Patch era, is still amazing, and you should definitely check it out. The funny thing is how even in the comics, the other characters who interact with Patch and Madripoor eventually fess up to the fact that they pretty much always knew Patch was Wolverine, admitting that his attempt at a disguise is as ridiculous and dumb as we all thought it was. Still, I do love the Patch look, so this is more me pointing out how silly it is, as opposed to dumb in like a bad way. This is actually a lovably dumb superhero suit, I would say. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button. Number 9. Superman Red and Blue. Admittedly, these designs are actually kind of really cool, but it's more the power sets that come with them and how they attempted to, in essence, reset Superman with these looks that makes them kind of dumb. Although I do admire DC for wanting to change up the design and the character, which honestly was a revolutionary choice. The fact remains that this is comics, and returning to a status quo, especially for a character as old and as respected as Supes, is kinda necessary, which is why this didn't really work and a lot of people didn't really like it. Number 8. Swordsman. I don't know about you, but I personally find Jacques Duquesne's look a little silly. Like, what is happening with that helmet? Is that a helmet? It's not, right? Because it's like attached to his whole outfit, which is also really weird. What's happening there? Also, I don't mind the tunic and the tights, but the weird pink and purple color combination here is interesting for color choices. At least that's how I see the colors. I don't know if you guys see pink and purple, but that's what I'm seeing here. And the fact that while he has gloves on to protect his hands, he has nothing to cover his arms, except for, I guess, those armbands. What are the armbands for? Are they supposed to protect him, or are they like just for adornment? The thing I love about the modern look for the Kotati version of this character by comparison to the original human swordsman who first appeared in Marvel Comics back in the 60s is that at least this plant version, while still not having full sleeves, had the improved design of wearing bracers. Honestly, I think that makes more sense for a master swordsman rather than gloves and armbands. And also, just for context, I was talking about the original swordsman design there, so. Number 7. Azrael's Batman. As per Saya Dubray's suggestion from the comments on part 1 of this list, I had to include Jean-Paul Valley's Batman outfit here. You're completely right, Saya. It is one of the most 90s outfits around. And while I am a big fan of dumb 90s outfits, that doesn't make them any less dumb. It just means that I love things that are dumb, which is I think fine. And this outfit is definitely included in the list of dumb 90s outfits for sure. From the weird cape collar to the metal accents and back again to the insane amount of muscle definition that we can see through what must be the tightest fitting outfit ever. Also, metal garters. I mean, having a metal garter on your leg, I imagine that has to be uncomfortable. Number 6. Vision. Marvel Comics initially had a completely different character who is known as the hero Vision. This was actually back, I believe, when they were Timely, before they were known as Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics would ultimately, of course, ditch their original version of the character and later get a completely new version, an android instead of an alien, who would end up as the Vision we know and love today. Not only is this original Vision's costume a product of the times, that insanely thick gold belt that he's wearing, but if you consider Martian Manhunter's costume to be ridiculous, Vision likely inspired that look, having a similar origin and a similar appearance initially, and appearing 15 years earlier in the comics in 1940, whereas Martian Manhunter, I believe, first appeared in 1955, so yeah. Number 5. Mangaverse Black Cat. Mangaverse Black Cat has a pretty wild look. To be fair to the universe, this one fits, I would say, in regards to, a manga look, but boy oh boy is it strange when you think of Black Cat's standard look over on Earth 616. I mean, Black Cat has always been a sexy character, as many are in comics, but she doesn't usually have quite a deep v-neck. I'm not sure how exactly this suit also really functions. It must be made of some very firm material or like glued into place for it to stay on. Also missing are the tufts of white fur we're used to to seeing Felicia wear, which I actually do miss. I really like those. I still feel like those could have been incorporated in some way in this look, but I guess they wanted to move away from having this version of the character look too similar to her, 616 counterpart, which honestly, fair enough, but still the deep V and the super long claws for me feel pretty weird. Maybe it's just because I'm not as into manga as I used to be, I don't know, but that's where we're at. Number 4, Doctor Strange, a new Sorcerer Supreme. The 90s was a time when many folks got new looks. Some of them were, no, actually almost all of them were pretty terrible. But that's why we love them, right? Steven was not exempt from this. He got one of the most mystical 90s looks after years of having what I would say was a relatively unchanged costume. It didn't change that much, and even today it's kind of got a similar vibe. His costume was tweaked here and there, but usually for the most part it's just been slightly updated. But this was a pretty crazy refresh for him. His hair was even different. This transformation took place in issue number 75 of Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme, where Steven revealed himself at the end as the true Doctor Strange. The sunglasses are what really get me with this one, though honestly, kinda wanna cosplay as 90s Strange now. I mean, what a vibe. Also, I love that he comes out and he's like, the sun, I must put on sunglasses. To make sense of why he's wearing sunglasses. Which, I mean, you gotta make sense of that, otherwise how am I supposed to accept as a reader? Number 3, Starfire from Red Hood and the Outlaws. Based on how the comments looked for part 2, I can already feel the animosity surrounding this point just building up. Just for me even mentioning it. I could end the point here and I feel like people would rage. But regardless, I'm gonna dive into my perspective of this one anyways, because, well, I mean, that's what I'm here to do, so that's what we're gonna do. Talking about costumes that I think are somewhat dumb, and so we're gonna get into that. As I've said before though, and I will say again, dumb to me doesn't always mean bad. It can mean illogical, silly, or contradictory. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. I love a lot of bad costumes myself, so they're not bad, they're just, I don't know, on paper good. Does that make sense? Well, I don't actually mind the design. I do think this look for Starfire was a bit much. I do think Starfire makes sense wearing less based on her energy absorption abilities. However, that being said, her first costume was basically just like a one-piece swimsuit with some cutouts. This is like not even a bikini level of coverage. It's like a bikini bottoms with cutouts with like a collar, shoulder thing, and pasties. And I mean, it's definitely an homage to that original look, but they undressed it even more for like really no reason. Add in the fact that Starfire was also an amnesiac at the beginning of this run, and I feel like we could have done better by Corey here. It would actually be less ridiculous to me if Corey was the one to have chosen this with all her memories attached. Then it would actually have some agency. This was kind of just a weird time in general for her character. Also, because it bears repeating, apparently, I am not critiquing the outfit because it is sexy. It's more the issue of how extreme it is and what was going on for Starfire in the story when she wore this look. I like sexy costumes. I like characters who wear sexy costumes. That's all fine with me. Number 2, Superman's t-shirt and jeans look. I mean, what even is this look? I understand wanting to modernize your character's appearance and give them something totally different, but a t-shirt and jeans just seems a little too low-key. And I know it had a narrative explanation, but still, it's pretty ridiculous. This is the outfit Superman wore when he drove around the US on a motorbike. He couldn't fly at the time, and what a time it was. I will say though, this one would be really easy to cosplay at least, so it gets some points for that, because I mean, anyone could do this look. I could do this look. I could be this Superman. Number 1, Red Sonja's chainmail bikini. Now, of course, I have cosplayed as Red Sonja, but even I can admit that her outfit is pretty ridiculous. And I say this with much love for this outfit. The whole point of wearing chainmail is to protect you, so wearing it in a bikini form, it doesn't really make any sense. The only thing I can say about this that kind of makes sense is Red Sonja really doesn't care what other people think of her, so I could see her wearing a chainmail bikini because you just didn't care, but it's not good armor, you know what I mean? And sure, it's an iconic look that I will happily wear any day of the week, well, as long as I'm feeling like wearing a chainmail bikini, but that doesn't change how goofy it is, as is evident by many of those who write and draw her, changing up what she wears inside the comics while kind of saving that iconic look more for either a single moment in a story or just for the cover. So I feel like even creative teams acknowledge this. Number 10, Superman's new costume. Superman at one point had a new costume made for him. The costume was created for him by Lex Luthor, but Superman apparently didn't recognize his bald nemesis because he was in a disguise, i.e. he was wearing a wig. The other fail here on Superman's part comes from the fact that there was literally something built into the suit that he should have noticed. A giant ball of lead. Well, maybe not a giant ball of lead, but a sizable ball of lead. You'd think Superman would see that and immediately be suspicious, because although yes, he can't actually use his X-ray vision on lead, that makes it a lot more obvious that like, hey, that's lead. The lead actually contained kryptonite, Superman's weakness, and Luthor designed the suit so that he could trigger when the lead would be eroded away by acid to reveal the kryptonite, which would weaken Superman at the most opportune time. Also, Superman, this suit is just not very good. How did you not notice something was up with this? It literally has a giant green box across the chest that just reads in blocky letters Superman, and it's bright yellow with purple accents. Bruh. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. Big Barda is defeated by her own weapon. At one point, Big Barda is living on Earth and she has her purse stolen. The man who steals it takes chase, not realizing who he is just stolen from and that a powerful weapon, her Mega Rod, is in that purse. While escaping into the sewers, he runs into another being from Apocalypse, Sleaze. Sleaze takes the purse, and when Big Barda finally catches up, surprises her by knocking her out with her own weapon, because he knows how to use a Mega Rod. He later would use the Mega Rod to control Barda's mind and will, and even tried to force her and Superman to make a raunchy tape together using Barda's Mega Rod. Oh geez, Sleaze. Oof. Number 8. Wonder Woman is bound. One of the dumbest ways that Wonder Woman has been defeated actually correlates to one of her most classic and well-known weaknesses, being bound. In fact, traditionally, this only worked if she was bound by a man. Doing so would reduce her to becoming simply mortal, stripping away all her godlike powers and abilities. Although, to be fair, even a normal woman might be strong or skilled enough to actually escape these bonds. So, you would think Wonder Woman might also be. And yes, I understand that this weakness also has symbolic significance for this character, but relative to the character and how powerful she normally is, it's still kinda dumb. Because it's like, yeah, you're powerful all the time, but if a man bounds you, that's it? You just lose it all? Wow. Harsh. Number 7. Hulk loves puppies. If you can believe it, at one point Hulk was actually defeated by his love of puppies. This was revealed to be a method that S.H.I.E.L.D. used to successfully calm Hulk down. Hulk has even stated in the comics before that his favorite animal is a dog, so I guess this makes sense in that regard, but that doesn't make it any less ridiculous. Hence why it's on this list. Number 6. Wolverine's no nose. Wolverine's nose is not really a suit at all, but it is a whole look that Wolverine had for a time that was bizarre, and I thought, hey, if Tony's iron nose can make the cut on AJ's part 1, it's important that I also include Wolverine's nose on part 2 here. While Iron Man having a nose added to his suit was weird for the character, Wolverine had the opposite problem of completely losing his nose, which was also weird for the character. However, at least this was more of a stylistic choice inspired by the story than, an arbitrary change to the design based on where Iron Man's eyes are. So I will at least say that in the defense of this pretty strange look for the character. It came as a result of Wolverine having the adamantium coating ripped from his bones by Magneto, which also turned him feral. For a few years he'd become more bestial in nature than he normally was, which apparently also meant his nose, I guess, had to go, becoming more of a flat central spot on his face with 2 nostrils. Kinda like became pushed into his face. Almost. I mean, honestly, this version of Wolverine almost becomes unrecognizable when you take the nose off. Number 5. Smallville's Aquaman. Whether we're talking sleeves or no sleeves, second generation or first generation, the Aquaman look for Smallville was pretty ridiculous and honestly kinda dumb in a bad way. While I typically try to approach dumb lists with less of that kind of outlook because, dumb doesn't always have to mean bad, and it definitely doesn't usually mean bad for me, this costume, in my opinion, is actually pretty atrocious. I honestly, I don't really like this one. Honestly, I think I'd rather have the Golden Age look with the weird fins on his arms and his legs over this one. It just looks like a weird jogging outfit to me, and I know it's probably supposed to be like a wetsuit, but no, just let's pretend it didn't happen. Except we can't because it's on this list, so now we all have to remember it. Number 4, The Crossing Thor. I mean, everyone in The Crossing looked pretty wild, but Thor is definitely up there for me personally. The Crossing is the event where we learned that this whole time Iron Man had been basically a sleeper agent for Immortus, aka an alternate timeline version of Kang the Conqueror. The whole time! Dun dun dun! In honor of this very important and historical time, Thor and many of the other Avengers ended up with kind of new looks. Now, Thor's costume was definitely the most 90s look I think I've ever seen. The only thing it's missing really for me is pouches, honestly. What it lacks in pouches though, it makes up for with everything else in abundance. Tons of chains and elaborate excessive harnesses, and one of those weird like face masks that covers part of your face, like the sides and the top, but leaves a hole on the top of it for your hair to come out. And of course, I believe this was actually supposed to be what future Thor was meant to look like in this comic, in like another timeline, despite this look truly screaming 90s. In the story, this appeared to be a vision that we got of what a future Thor would look like. Now, thank goodness that hasn't ended up happening in this current timeline, at least not yet anyways. I don't know, that might still be somewhere lurking. Number 3, Star Sapphire. When it comes to Star Sapphire, Carol Ferris, she isn't always a hero and she isn't always a villain either. She's kind of done both of those things. She served both roles, but either way, she usually does so pretty ridiculously dressed, I gotta be honest. I mean, not always. She's had some reasonable costume designs and some that I've liked, but for this point, I'm focusing on her one-piece bathing suit-like costume with the middle of it cut out to the point that it becomes theoretically, structurally unsound, I'd say. For the record, I don't mind a woman who shows off her body. In fact, I too enjoy that, both as a woman and both as someone looking at women, especially when it comes from a place of empowerment. I don't really mind anyone showing off their body as long as they're the ones making that choice for themselves, and it makes sense. Truly, doing so can not only be a good showcase of confidence, but also of self-love and self-celebration, and that's hot to me. But this costume is just objectively ridiculous, because how does it stay on? I mean, I know that it's, probably like a construct, likely created by Carol, so we can explain it away with what is basically like kind of cosmic magic. But imagine cosplaying this look. Imagine it. Just imagine you wearing this costume, and how does that work? Without added invisible straps or literal glue or tape, it becomes impossible. And for that reason, I have to call it dumb, because logically, in our world at least, where sadly there are no green or violet lanterns, it simply doesn't work as it appears. Also, I have only ever seen people successfully cosplay this look with invisible straps. Glue would likely damage your outfit, and honestly, it's really hard on your skin, I know, because I've worn it under costumes before, and tape would probably sweat off unless it was really cold out. And I know because I'm not a super sweaty person, and I've also worn tape before and experienced that, which if you have to wear it in the cold too, you'd be really cold in this look. So really the only option is invisible straps, which clearly Carol doesn't need somehow in the comics, as she's never drawn with them. Unless maybe she is, but they're invisible so we don't see them. Even invisible straps, you usually see them, so just makes no sense. Number 2, The Crossing Wasp. I don't just want to talk about The Crossing here, folks, but as ridiculous as Thor's look is, Wasp is possibly even more wild. Now, she kind of had two looks as well. The one she wore at the beginning, which is kind of like a metallic bodysuit that somehow fits her like spandex, and possibly even has a metal pocket on the legs. I'm not sure. I saw that in one of the panels I was looking at, and I was like, wait a minute, does she have metal cargo pants that are skin tight? It looks like a pocket to me. The second is after she is resurrected in Avengers issue 394 and comes back literally looking like a pink bug woman with bright pink hair and bright pink wings. Number 1, Original Peacemaker. I have to say, I really love how dumb this look is, and I love that we managed to somehow keep it in the DCU, almost one for one. The reason why I went with the original version of Peacemaker's costume from his days at Charlton Comics isn't just because of the white pants, which to me are an absurd fashion choice to make when you know you're headed into a fray. Wearing white pants in general for me is like a huge thing. I'm a messy person in my day-to-day, so I can't imagine getting into a fight with white pants on. But the other thing that I really think is strange about this that really gets me is the weird giant helmet. It looks like there's a thick doorway sitting on top of Peacemaker's head.
Kicking off the list at number 10 is Ultra Boy. This one is interesting, as you'd be totally forgiven for laughing at this character, but then you'd have to say sorry, as you just insulted an incredibly powerful dude. Ultra Boy, or as he is known in his civilian guise, Joe-Na, possesses many of the same superpowers as Superboy, including superhuman speed, strength, flight, stamina, breath, vision, and invulnerability, which he gained from being swallowed by a massive space energy beast, which is essentially a giant space whale, hence the biblical Jonah name. While he was inside the energy beast's stomach, the radiation inside altered Joe-Na to give him superpowers. Now the only issue with Joe-Na, and it's a big one, is that he can only use one power at a time. This means that if he wants to fly through space at super speed, he must wear a spacesuit to survive in the cold vacuum, or when using his power for super strength, he is not invulnerable and can therefore get tired, feel muscular pain, or even pull a muscle. Joe-Na can switch these abilities almost instantly, but needs to make the conscious choice to do so, which honestly sounds kind of exhausting to me. I don't know. Number 9. Puck. The Alpha Flight member known as Puck was at one point literally just a little person who pushed himself to turn his body into an almost perfect physical specimen, able to lift hundreds of pounds and fight as well as his fellow Alpha Flighters. But this was before his Alpha Flight days. He had tons of adventures and his pretty basic but mysterious backstory added to his likability. But that ain't the dumb part. The dumb part came later on when it was revealed that Puck was actually much older than he seemed and was not actually born as a little person. Apparently, Puck used to be 7 feet tall and was a mercenary and adventurer who was born near the start of the 20th century. As a merc, he was hired to steal the Black Blade of Baghdad, and he totally got it, but then it unleashed an ancient magical being known as Black Razor. In order to defeat the being, Puck sucked him into his own body, becoming immortal in the process, but also losing half of his height and being trapped in the form of a little person. Why couldn't he just be a little person? I don't know. Number 8. Elongated Man. When Ralph Dibny was a tiny little Ralph Dibny, he saw a contortionist at a carnival and he was instantly down to be able to be like that guy. Everyone has their own thing, okay? And for Ralph, his thing was trying to figure out how someone could twist and fold their body into all sorts of shapes like that. Obsessed with learning the secrets of the contortionists for years and years, Ralph figured out that all the contortionists he observed drank the same drink. Now it's not some crazy formula, it's not some kind of tea, but it was actually a popular soft drink known as Gingold. Now Ralph knew for the most part that it was just a coincidence that they all drank the same drink, but that doesn't mean he wasn't gonna bet everything on it. Ralph literally taught himself chemistry, which should be the superpower itself, and he used his newly found chemistry skills to create a super concentrated extract from the fruit that was the basis and heart for Gingold, the Gingo fruit. And what do you know? The super concentrated extract allowed him to make any part of his body stretch to ridiculous degrees. What's that I hear you say? Why yes, this does make no sense. Number 7. Wally West. Between roughly 1950 and 1970, 90% of superhero origin stories involved either chemicals or radiation. That's just how it worked. The Flash, we are all most familiar with, Barry Allen, became the fastest man alive when he was working at his forensics laboratory one night and a freak bolt of lightning struck his rack of chemicals and also Barry himself. In a stroke of luck, instead of completely frying the guy, the electricity from the lightning mixed with the unique and specific collection of chemicals and it gave Barry Allen super speed and access to the Speed Force. Now while that origin may give you some pause, it's a classic origin story and most of us has just come to accept it. Now, 3 years after the Flash debuted, Barry Allen was visited by Wally West, the nephew of Barry's girlfriend, Iris. Wally was a big Flash fan, so Barry took him on a tour of his lab, the very lab where he was struck by lightning. Well, what do you know, a rogue bolt of lightning struck the very same rack of chemicals, all of which were still stored alongside each other, and then the lightning struck Wally West. The electricity mixed with this apparent unique collection of chemicals, unique enough to have it happen twice, and can you guess what happened? Yeah, Wally West gained super speed and access to the Speed Force. It's not like it doesn't make sense for an event to produce the same outcome, but I guess lightning really do be striking twice, huh? Or we got lazy with the writing. You pick.
Number 6. Barbara Gordon forgets her training. This has always been a weird superhero defeat that has baffled me personally. So Barbara Gordon is Batgirl, right? And yet in The Killing Joke, which admittedly is a story that initially was intended to exist purely outside of canon and still sort of does, Barbara is accosted by the Joker pretty easily. Now granted, this was while Barbara was in her civilian form and was visiting her father, Jim Gordon, at his home. So she goes to answer the door and is surprised to see the Joker there, who shoots her in the stomach. I understand being surprised, and I understand not wanting to reveal your identity as Batgirl, but come on. This is Babs! I feel like she could have handily disarmed the Joker here with everything else I know about her and how skilled she is. Or at least she should have been able to, in my headcanon. Maybe I'm being unreasonable to assume this, but I really don't think so. Also, I feel like even if you're like, oh, I gotta protect my secret identity by doing nothing, you could still do something. I mean, you are Jim Gordon's daughter, so I feel like people would assume you have some kind of combat training. Number 5. Jean's planetary-sized stroke. Sometimes I think about some of the things happening in the Krakoa era, and when I remember all the history of these characters, it blows my mind. Like when, for example, during Grant Morrison's new X-Men run in issue 150, Magneto was revealed to be Zorn, although thankfully we'd actually get an entirely different Zorn later on, and Magneto here used an electromagnetic pulse to give Jean Grey, who at the time had the power of the Phoenix Force, a quote planetary scale stroke. End quote. What that means, I still don't really know. What is that? This all went down at a moment too when Jean was actually winning the fight, but was used as a method for Magneto to basically turn the tables on her. Jean would end up dying in this battle, even though the idea of beating the Phoenix in this way just seems, pretty ridiculous to me. This is the Phoenix we're talking about, who can control, manipulate, and even create matter at an atomic level, who also prior to this was stabbed through by Wolverine, which she not only survived, but this actually unleashed her power, her latent Phoenix abilities. And yet somehow, after all that, she ends up killed by a stroke. Well, I guess it's not any stroke, it is a planetary scale one, but still. Also, what does that even mean? It's so comics. And now it's really weird to think that Jean and Magneto were friendly up until his death. That's pretty crazy. Number 4. Batwoman goes out with a whimper. For this point, we are not talking about Kate Kane, Batman's cousin and the current Batwoman over at DC Comics. We're talking instead about the first Batwoman, Kathy Kane. Although she does sound like she would be the same person based on, both of her names. This version of the character, however, was actually not related to Batman and was even a bit of a love interest for him, as well as a female crime-fighting partner. However, apparently neither her skills nor her connection and long-standing relationship with the Caped Crusader would protect her from getting unceremoniously fridged. Long before the term was ever coined, I believe. In issue number 485, more than 250 issues after her first appearance, she was killed, get this, off-panel, when Batman was knocked out. The League of Assassins had come for Kathy, and Batman was unable to stop them. While he was knocked unconscious, she was killed, and of course we don't get to see any of that because he was knocked out, and we're following his narrative, not hers. So with her death really only served as well to give Batman motivation to go after the League of Assassins, so there's also that point. Very unfortunate. Number 3. Green Lantern sees yellow. Yep, what a ridiculous way to defeat Green Lantern, but this was the approach that was taken in Frank Miller's Batverse. In All-Star Batman and Robin, The Boy Wonder issue number 9, Batman is confronted by Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. In this reality, Batman is not yet part of the Justice League, and Green Lantern doesn't like the way that Batman is operating. He's one of the people who is kind of more against offering Batman a place on the team, but he did think he could be redeemed. After all, Batman is still a hero, but it's his methods that Hal and many of the other team members take issue with, which is why Hal came to talk to him about that. However, this talk did not go so well. Green Lantern meets Batman and Robin in one of Batman's safe houses, which has all been completely painted yellow, right down to Batman and Robin's face and suits. Robin even eats yellow ice cream while Batman drinks yellow lemonade. It's like overkill. Obviously, this is done to mock Hal's weakness to the color and probably to actually weaken him, to be honest. Not only does Batman claim the moral high ground in their debate, but Robin actually manages to steal Green Lantern's ring in this issue, and then he, not Batman, is the one who proceeds to defeat him in a fistfight, even almost killing him, with Batman being forced to take aggressive action to save Hal's life. Also, could you imagine being in the ambulance that comes to this emergency call. You like come into this safe house. Everything's yellow everywhere. Like, that would be so weird. Oh boy. Number 2, Batman kicks the Hulk and lives. In DC Special Series issue number 27 from 1981, we get a strange mashup of Batman and the Hulk. Like many superhero team-ups, especially involving crossovers between publishers, these two end up initially forced to fight one another, with the Hulk being led to believe that Batman is his enemy, having been manipulated by the Joker. And I think we all know how we'd imagine this fight would go. I mean, Hulk versus Batman, you would think the Hulk's definitely gonna win that fight. Batman is extremely skilled, but he is just a man. During their first fight, Batman desperately attempts to defeat the Hulk by using sleeping gas. However, Hulk understands that the gas is dangerous and decides to hold his breath. Batman surmises that he needs to find a way to make the Hulk breathe, because the Hulk could probably hold his breath forever, since his lungs are so big. First of all, Batman, I don't think that's the way lungs work. Just because the Hulk has a larger lung capacity doesn't mean he could hold his breath for longer, I don't think. His body is simply larger, which is why his lungs are bigger, and lung size doesn't necessarily correlate to being skilled at holding one's breath, at least not as far as I know. In fact, the Hulk being large would likely just mean that his body requires more oxygen, hence his larger lungs. Secondly, Batman kicks Hulk in the stomach to force him to breathe, which somehow works. Which is insane, considering that Batman is just a normal man with amazing skills. In other words, how did he succeed and also not shatter his leg in his attempt to do so? I mean, a kick from Batman to Hulk has to feel like nothing. And also, if Batman kicked the Hulk with enough force to do that, you would think he would mess himself up really bad. Number 1, Dollar Bill's cape. A lot of people say that capes are dumb. It's not just Edna Mode saying that. And if you were able to ask the Dollar Bill, I'm sure he'd actually agree with them. But you can't, because 1, he's a fictional character, and 2, he's dead. Dollar Bill is a minor character from Watchmen. He was a member of the Minutemen in the 1940s. While attempting to stop an armed bank robbery, his cape was caught in a revolving door and he was shot and killed. So, no capes!
In at 10, Legion of Super Pets. Okay, look, I know they had an animated movie and stuff, but like, come on. The Legion of Super Pets was a remarkable team comprised of extraordinary animal companions, okay? Among its members were Crypto the Super Dog, Streaky the Super Cat, and the inclusion of Wizzy. In pursuit of their ambitious plan to relocate Earth to their solar system, the otherworldly beings known as the Brain Globes of Rambat devised a strategy that hinged on defeating Superboy. Failing to gain control over him, they resorted to summoning Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, and Saturn Girl from the future, who were members of the Legion of Superheroes. Under the mental command of the Brain Globes, this trio was compelled to capture Superboy, and then once he was subdued, the Brain Globes relinquished their hold over the Legionnaires. Recognizing that their power did not extend to animals though, the Legionnaires gathered Crypto, Streaky, Beepo, which was like from Superman's present, and Comet the Super Horse to confront their extraterrestrial adversaries. With the combined efforts of the pets, they triumphed over those and subsequently honored as the Legion of Super Pets, which was an animal division of the Legion of Superheroes. And then each pet was returned to their respective time periods, but like, come on, dude, what the hell? Who thought of this storyline? In at 9, X-Babies. The original X-Babies were a youthful incarnation of the X-Men, as you could probably guess, consisting of Nightcrawler, Storm, Wolverine, Rogue, Colossus, Shadowcat, Magneto, Longshot, and Psylocke. Mojo, the mastermind behind their de-aging, who is not a Powerpuff Girls villain, as I've been informed, had intended to dispose of them, but they were rescued by the New Mutants. During the X-Men's absence, in the Fall of Mutants event, Mojo sought to create replacement teams using Neoplasm, experimenting with various iterations such as gender-swapped and animal versions, but no more Legion of Super X animals here. But eventually, the X-Babies came into existence. However, Mojo soon deemed them a failed experiment and planned to eliminate them. Seizing that opportunity though, the X-Babies escaped, taking the pilot Ricochet Rita with them. Seeking refuge, the group found sanctuary within Mojo's crossover house, and in a fear of confrontation, they escaped to Earth 616. Unfortunately though, Rita was captured during their fight and covertly transformed into the agent set on a mission to apprehend the X-Babies. But yes, in the Mojo verse, there is a team of X-Men babies. Most of these are like a good dumb, It's like, it's dumb, but it's also good. But some the other ones are just like, why? And at 8, the Inferior Five. The Inferior Five is basically DC making fun of the Fantastic Four, and you can trace their lineage back to the esteemed Freedom Brigade, a team of masked adventurers hailing from an alternate Earth, which is Earth 12, existing prior to the Crisis on Infinite Earths event. Following the retirement of the brigade, their children were reluctantly coerced into carrying on their legacy and utilizing their inherited abilities and powers. However, their commitment to the superhero vocation was lackluster at best. For almost 2 decades, Megalopolis enjoyed a period of peace, thanks to the Freedom Brigade's successful eradication of crime. But this tranquility was shattered when a new villain emerged, known as Dr. Gruesome. Mayor Boswell, faced with this newfound threat, called upon the retired members for assistance, but it was during this time that Patriot and Lady Liberty saw an opportunity to rally their former comrades and encourage their children to do their work for them. Taking up residence in the former headquarters of the Freedom Brigade, the 5 fledgling heroes embarked on a challenging journey to defeat Dr. Gruesome, albeit relying heavily on circumstance. Despite their initial victory, they soon discovered that their individual skills clashed and rendered them a remarkably ineffective team. So yeah, there you go. That's DC making fun of the Fantastic Four, just with an extra person. That's why it failed, because they had that one more person. In its 7, Great Lakes Avengers. Inspired by his newfound power to defy death, Craig Hollis assumed the mantle of Mr. Immortal and embarked on a crusade against crime. Recognizing the advantages of having a team by his side, he placed an advertisement seeking individuals of action. Yes, this dude made an ad for a superhero team. Gathering at a local YMCA, I'm not even joking, Mr. Immortal was joined by Big Bertha, Dr. Sore, Doorman, Flatman, and Leather Boy, which just sounds like my Saturday nights. Together, they established themselves as the Great Lakes Avengers, serving as a sister team to the West Coast Avengers and the Avengers of the East Coast. Taking on various criminal menaces, the Great Lakes Avengers swiftly garnered the attention of Hawkeye and Mockingbird, who were intrigued. The duo journeyed to Wisconsin to investigate these imposter Avengers. However, upon discovering that the team was comprised of an unconventional set of heroes, Hawkeye and Mockingbird took it upon themselves to provide guidance and training. These guys were trained by Hawkeye, the guy with a bow and nothing else. In the early days, the team relied heavily on the money that Ashley Crawford, Big Bertha, was making from modeling to finance their HQ, but yeah, they also made use of her private jet for transportation. God, this whole thing has to be a joke, right? Doorman, Leather Boy.
Number 6, Black Condor. A young Richard Grey, who would go on to become the flying superhero Black Condor, was the only survivor of an attack by Mongolian bandits on him and his archaeologist family. Now, stuck alone and in the wild, the little Richard was taken in by a family of condors. In the same way Mowgli was taken in by wolves and Tarzan was taken in by gorillas. Unfortunately, Richard wasn't a bird. He didn't have the musculature or the feathers or anything really that allows him to take flight like his new family could. But what are millions of years of evolution compared to the human brain and a little bit of practice? Richard spent most of his life studying the birds until he actually managed to teach himself how to just fly. Oh, there was also the exposure to a radioactive meteor, but he truly believed he had taught himself to fly. Once he was discovered by a missionary, Grey headed back home to the United States, where he became the flying adventurer known as the Black Condor. He went back specifically though to save a certain US senator, but when it was too late and he just happened to look exactly like the senator, he decided to abandon the name of Richard Grey and instead took the politician's identity. I think Richard Grey actually just might be insane. Yeah. Number 5, the Flaming Carrot. You would be forgiven for not knowing of the superhero known as the Flaming Carrot. For one, the Flaming Carrot has been published by different publishers from Aardvark Vanaheim, Renegade Press, and Dark Horse until 2005 when he began being published by Image Comics. The other reason is because, look at him! He's utterly ridiculous! His ridiculous look is matched by his equally ridiculous origin though. Essentially, the Flaming Carrot became a superhero after being bet to read thousands of comic books, specifically 5,000 comic books. Somehow, reading 5,000 comic books caused this unknown man to have brain damage, and then he appeared with a giant carrot for a mask, which had apparently an eternal flame on top of it, and he became a crime fighter. That's it. His gear and equipment is pretty equally nuts too. He has a utility belt which contains a yo-yo, a lucky rabbit's foot, laughing gas, magnifying glass, band-aids with little stars and rockets on them, silly putty, a skeleton key, stink bombs, a decoder badge, Pez candy, a magnet, a bubble pipe, super glue, a wishbone, trading cards, invisible ink, sneeze powder, and fizzies. That's his gear, alongside a nuclear-powered pogo stick and flippers that he wears at all times, just in case he has to swim. 'Cause you never know. Number 4. Whizzer. Bob Frank and his father Emil were traveling through Africa when they both unfortunately came down with an extremely deadly illness. Needing a transfusion in order to save their lives, Emil made it a mission to find someone who would be willing to help them and to save Bob's life. Apparently, there was absolutely no one who could help them out. But then, to make matters so much more worse, Bob also got bitten by a very deadly cobra. Bob was not having a good go of things here. When that happened, a mongoose then just showed up and it introduced that snake to the afterlife. Of course, this must have been a sign, and Emil had the idea to use the mongoose for the transfusion instead of a human to save his son's life. Don't worry about how a mongoose and a human are completely different. He was going to save his son's life, goddammit, okay? He was gonna do it. Now, not only did the mongoose DNA running through his veins actually save his life, but naturally this had the added benefit of allowing Bob to now run at super speed. Apparently this was also just common information, as Emil explained it as nonchalantly as pouring a cup of tea. Later on, it would be revealed that Frank had natural powers that were just jump-started by the addition of the mongoose DNA, but of course, that's only after the writers realized how that makes no sense. Number 3. Fat Man the Human Flying Saucer. Once upon a time, there was a pretty ordinary, wealthy man by the name of Van Crawford. Van was an expert on all things hobbies, and he owned a string of hobby shops. Well, Van here just happened to be waltzing along when he spied, in his little eye, an alien flying saucer crashing into the Earth. Now, being such a nice guy, Van decided to clear the space for the saucer to land, even pushing over a tree to do so. Very nice. Crawford came face to face with an alien, and it turns out that this alien was the flying saucer he had seen. This race of aliens seems to be able to transform from their normal form into a flying saucer, which is honestly a pretty spectacular ability to have. Luckily for Van though, after the alien gave him a drink that seemed to look and taste like a chocolate milkshake, he also gained this awesome and unique ability to transform himself into a human flying saucer. It's honestly really fun and kind of super charming that I really enjoy it, and I think we can all agree that it's kind of dumb still though. Number 2. Spider-Ham. Hailing from a universe where all the Marvel characters are replaced with cartoon character animal versions of themselves, Peter Porker is Spider-Ham, a pig. Peter Porker was actually born a spider named Peter, and he lived in the basement lab of May Porker, a scientist who had created the world's first atomic-powered hairdryer. May Porker, using the atomic hairdryer, accidentally irradiated herself, and then she bit Peter the spider, which made him turn into an anthropomorphic pig just like her, only with the relative powers of a spider. In his premiere issue, he would go on to do battle with Hulk Bunny, created when Bruce Bunny was trapped in an arcade cabinet and bombarded with gamma radiation. I wish I was making this all up, I really do, but it's also kind of awesome. Spider-Ham has most of the same abilities as 616 Spider-Man, only he has the rather unique ability called Spider Nonsense, which basically allows him to be more and more cartoony the more danger he is in, which is the perfect reason to have the wackiest nonsense happen that will save his piggy hide in some of the most imaginative ways possible. In at number 1, the Red Bee. The Red Bee from DC Comics comes from a time in comic books and the superhero genre when superheroes were really just pulp vigilantes who had some kind of really minor edge over the criminals they would be thwarting. Rick Raleigh was the assistant to the district attorney, and with this look at the criminal justice system, he grew tired of seeing criminals escape justice either through technicalities or because the court system was just too slow. Growing fed up, Rick decided he would create a costumed identity to bring criminals to justice. But As a normal, pretty intelligent guy with a flawless moral compass and a decent right hook, he didn't really have an edge over those he was facing. Enter Michael. Michael was a trained bee, like the insect that Rick would keep in his belt buckle. Rick was a unique kind of bee though. As we know, bees don't survive for too long after they sting someone. Luckily though, Michael had the advantage of being able to sting multiple times. Michael, coupled with Rick's fists and other equipment, would be the bane of villains everywhere, and thus the Red Bee was born.
Number 10, Typeface. What a strange one. Typeface was a fairly short-lived villain from Spider-Man comics. He made his first appearance in Peter Parker Spider-Man issue number 23. Initially, Typeface was villain Gordon Thomas. After suffering much misfortune in his life and being laid off from the only job that gave him solace, creating signs, he decided to become a villain, aiming to get retribution. He took a grease pencil and wrote a bunch of letters on his face, that big R on his forehead for retribution, and he also donned a bunch of letters, wearing them on his clothes and sometimes kind of like a necklace of sorts. This was his look. Now, he didn't really have any powers, just a passion for fonts and letters, although he was military trained, so at least he had that. His time as a criminal was quite short, as he was pretty quickly inspired by Spider-Man actually, and a memory of his brother, to seek redemption instead of retribution. But even his time as a hero also was not really that long, probably in part due to how ridiculous his outfit and his gimmick was as Typeface. He literally fought people by throwing letters at one point, so that's kind of where we're at. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, don't miss out on any of our content by clicking that subscribe button, and make sure you have that bell. Hit that bell so you can get all the notifications when we have new content for you. Number 9, Kite Man. I love Kite Man, but no matter what suit I see him in, pretty much all of them are ridiculous because, well, I mean, he's so ridiculous. Kite Man has to be one of the highlights of the Harley Quinn animated series. Although I'm a bit behind right now, to be honest, he has been one of the greatest characters that stand out to me from that show, and honestly, I love how much dimension they give Kite Man. Like, this show made me such a Kite Man fan, and even though, yeah, I think his suit is dumb, that doesn't mean that I don't love Kite Man. When it comes to his suit, of course, it is pretty dumb because, I mean, well, he wears a kite on his back, that's pretty ridiculous, which he uses, or attempts to use, to commit crimes. But that doesn't mean I love him any less. In fact, I probably love him even more because of how dumb his look and his gimmick are. Hell yeah! Number 8, Original Kang the Conqueror. Even though I do love Kang, and also I personally do love his look, even I cannot deny that he looks absolutely ridiculous. From the helmet to the tunic, down to the metallic adornments on his outfit here. This look is definitely one that seems to have emerged from a time storm, but I wouldn't necessarily guess from the future myself. Although something that you do have to admire and admit about it is that it is iconic, it's striking, and it stands out. The original Kang look was created by Jack Kirby, who truly is a legendary artist, and despite the fact that, you know, this look now feels dated, the fact remains that this costume has pretty much remained the same throughout the character's long history, which I think is a testament to, you know, how striking and iconic it is. When it comes to his standard look, you know, this is pretty much it. So yes, it might seem ridiculous, but it certainly is memorable, and despite being silly, is still very clearly loved by a lot of us. Even in the MCU, they pretty much left this look as is. They just kind of like texturized it, I think, a little bit, and other than that, I mean, it looks great in the MCU, even though objectively ridiculous. Number 7, New 52 Riddler. I love the Riddler as a villain, but not all of his looks have been smash hits. Included in the lot that are not so great is his redesign from the New 52. We first see him, I believe, as an inmate in Arkham Asylum there. He wears a bandana with 2 holes cut out as, you know, places for his eyes to go, the usual Arkham inmate suit, and of course sports that famous, but honestly very terrible, green question mark mohawk, but trimmed all the way down. It's definitely a look, but it's not a look that I'm really a fan of for Riddler, I will tell you that. I like New 52 Riddler the best when he's in a suit decorated with question marks. Even the Jim Carrey version of this character in question mark bespeckled spandex is way preferred to me over this look. Fortunately, as New 52 would go on, this design would evolve and change. Thank goodness. New 52 was an interesting time for a lot of people in redesigns.
In its sixth, the Justice League of Antarctica. The Injustice League was a group of bumbling villains who found themselves unintentionally regarded as heroes. Initially formed by Major Disaster as a counter-strike force against the newly internationalized Justice League, they clashed briefly with the JLI, but were swiftly defeated. Following their defeat, the Injustice League disbanded, with each member going their separate ways. Through a stroke of luck though, the media mistakenly portrayed them as champions of justice, applauding their supposed reformation. This unexpected turn of events fueled Major Disaster's ambitions, leading him to appeal to Maxwell Lord, the liaison of the Justice League International. Recognizing the potential value in monitoring these comically inept individuals, Lord extended an invitation for them to join the Justice League Antarctica branch, with the primary aim of giving the somewhat dim-witted Nort a purpose. Lord then appointed him as the leader of the team. Under Nort's guidance, the Injustice League embarked on their new role in Antarctica, providing an opportunity for Lord and the Justice League to keep a watchful eye on these unlikely group of characters. But you know what? At least they'll save Happy Feet. Penguins are in Antarctica, right? Or is it that they aren't in Antarctica? I have no idea. Halfway through, in at number 5, Grandpa. Not even joking. Limited information is available about the Global Reaction Agency for Mysterious Paranormal Activity, aka GRAMPA, which was just a great acronym, guys. Good job. The organization operates with a small number of field agents stationed worldwide, dedicated to the noble task of saving the world from paranormal stuff. While GRAMPA is recognized by governments around the globe, it may not always command the respect it deserves. In one instance, a member of the Japanese self-defense forces considered 2 GRAMPA agents to be a more dangerous threat than Terminus himself. In the aftermath of the secret invasion, GRAMPA sought the assistance of the mighty Avengers, led by Henry Pym, to address international crises, but in doing so, the agency granted the team immunity from prosecution by Hammer, thereby enabling them to act freely in the face of global emergencies, like paranormal ones, you know, like the Paranormal Activity movies? Yeah, they're all over that. In at 4, Super Buddies. The Super Buddies, a reassembled team of former Justice League International members who were brought together by Maxwell Lord as his robot companion Elron, are just interesting at best. The roster consists of Blue Beetle, Booster Gold, Fire, the Elongated Man, his wife Sue, and Captain Atom. Although they once fought side by side, the Super Buddies struggled to find harmony within their ranks. Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, formerly known as the comedic duo Abbott and Costello of the JLI, now engaged in constant arguments, each futilely attempting to prove their own maturity. Unfortunately, their efforts go largely unnoticed because Booster Gold and Ralph Dibny face a lack of credibility among their peers, a fact that no one hesitates to point out. Fire, on the other hand, runs a website called blazingfire.com, where she offers paid downloads of images of herself. It's basically the site that shall not be named, but for a superhero. It's a whole thing, okay? Then adding to the mix, Fire convinces Sue that Ralph is below her level of attractiveness, causing Ralph to develop self-conscious behavior, when the dude can literally shape himself into whoever he wants. So I don't understand that. He can literally just give himself a couple extra inches in height and he'd be fine. But you know what? It's a thing. The fact that all of this is happening is just so dumb. I respect it though. And at 3, Chess Set. The Chess Set organization made a sinister attempt to auction off the remains of Auric and Silver, former members of Gamma Flight, along with the body of a civilian scientist. These individuals had undergone experiments by the Sphinx and his agents in their pursuit of superhuman abilities, and the scientist, who claimed to have gained powers from these corpses, had stolen them and put them up for auction under the Chess Set organization. Alpha Flight, the successor to Gamma Flight, along with the assistance of Spider-Man, tracked down the location of the auction, and at the event, the enigmatic Brass Bishop revealed that the energies from the Sphinx's experiments had become infused with the bodies of the siblings and the scientists. They ended up forming like one massive entity during a fight, but then the new entity, formed by Vengeance, sought to eliminate the Chess Set and take revenge. However, Guardian, the leader of Alpha Flight, appealed to that being's sense of honor and persuaded it that killing Chess Set would not honor on our memories. But you know what? These guys are heroes for making money in this world, okay? They're lifting themselves up by their bootstraps, and I respect it. But ultimately, in number 2, Bizarro League. Okay, I get that it's Bizarro, but since it is Bizarro, they are the opposite of what they are, and since you're trying to see them as villains, that means that they're heroes, okay? When Bizarro 3 inadvertently absorbed radiation from a blue sun, he gained the ability to duplicate himself and create other Bizarro life forms resembling individuals from Earth. Utilizing this ability, he populated a cuboid planet in the Blue Star solar system known as Bizarro World. These replicas, among other numerous duplicates, he created like a Bizarro version of the Justice League. However, the inhabitants of Bizarro World eventually grew disoriented with Bizarro 3's rule, leading a rebellion against him. In this moment, Bizarro 3's friends from the Justice League intervened to assist him, encased within their own hyperbolic chamber headquarters. It's all Bizarro versions. There's Bizarro Superman, Bizarro Flash. There's even a Bizarro Doomsday that they're fighting. It's a whole thing. They're still kind of heroes, and I respect them. Kind of. And finally, in number 1, Alpha Fight. Alpha Fight is basically just Canada's version of the Avengers. It's the foremost team of superheroes. Established and operated by the Canadian government through Department H, whatever that is. They were formed because of the Superpowers Registration Act in Parliament, which mandated the employment of all superpowered individuals, including mutants, by the government. It's meant to just be the freaking Avengers, but Canadian. I find that offensive. We should have something better. Like the Mounties. Yeah, that's right.
Kicking off the list today at number 10 is Valkyrie from the Ultimate Comics. Valkyrie is an incredibly capable warrior and is probably one of the strongest members of the Ultimates, but she wasn't always that way. Initially, Barbara Norris was just a 19-year-old girl with no actual powers who was obsessed with superheroes, specifically Thor. She did have some novice level martial arts skills though, and she used those as a member of the Ultimate Universe's Defenders, who were really just wannabe superheroes. They went off pretending to be superheroes for clout, essentially, until Loki gave them all real powers. She then eventually joined the Ultimates, but all the while she was claiming to be an incredibly capable warrior, she was suited up to go tanning, basically. Valkyrie initially was pretty scantily clad for most of her appearances. Later on, after working with the Ultimates for a bit longer and having some real training with real Asgardians, she would begin to armor up to bring her more in keeping with someone who is actually engaging in armed combat on the daily. But for a good chunk of time, she was jumping into battle extremely unprepared. Maybe coming back from the afterlife taught her armor was kind of useful, but I think the change in her costume could actually also kind of show her character's growth in a weird kind of way.
And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about ridiculous suits that people wear, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Death's Head. Death's Head is a character more prominently featured in Marvel UK, who honestly looks like he just stepped out of Reboot to me. Or rather, Reboot's Megabyte looks like he may have taken a page out of Death's Head's book when it comes to his look, I should say, since Reboot actually came out after Death's Head first appeared and was created over at Marvel Comics UK. And while I do think Death's Head's look is very extreme and exaggerated, which is why he is going to make my cut here, I will say it does kind of make sense when you learn that he first made his appearance in Transformers issue 113. I mean, he does kind of have that extreme Transformers look. But Death's Head himself is not actually a Transformer. He's a robotic bounty hunter actually, although he prefers being called like basically a peacekeeper. But you know, bounty hunter, peacekeeper, I guess those terms are interchangeable. But while you might be wondering if he can even make the cut as a hero, yeah, he pretty much does. He's basically like a bounty hunter with a moral code, sorry, a peacekeeping person with a moral code. So walking the line of being a hero, I'd say. Although I'm kind of now wondering if he fits the suit criteria, as his suit is really his body, but I'm gonna count it because, you know, many robots, they don't really wear suits, so it's weird to think about, but you know, many robots are kind of just walking around like kind of naked.
Number 8, Armored Daredevil. Matt Murdock has been through a lot of redesigns. As one of the most popular Marvel heroes, that does make sense. His first initial change from yellow to fully red stuck through basically until the modern day, but in between then and now, Marvel still flirted with several other ideas. After getting a pretty brutal beatdown at the hands of the Wild Pack, Daredevil decided that maybe a little armor would be a good choice. He faked his own passing as Matt and then designed himself a new red and black suit with prominent silver plating on his shoulders, knees, and up the sides of his legs for extra protection. Now, if I'm honest, I think this suit that first appeared in Daredevil number 321 in 1993 actually looks pretty cool. Maybe I'm weird, but something about it just feels like yes. I will admit, for a character who's pretty dependent on stealth though, it may not make the most sense, and it was rather flashy, but he still used it for a decent chunk of time, and I'm sure the extra protection came in handy a few times when he used it to fight villains like Hellspawn. Thank God he went back to just the red though. That's the classic, and I like that.
Number 7, Professor X and his Shi'ar exosuit. Professor X's Shi'ar exosuit, oh my. So this is one I personally find to be kind of silly, more because of my own headcanon to be honest, so go with me here. I don't know why this manifested for me, but when I was looking back on that fight against Magneto where Wolverine gets the adamantium ripped from his bones and Professor X as a result shuts down Magneto's brain basically, I saw this suit and I couldn't stop seeing it, and it lives still in my memory and in my heart every time I think of Professor X, really. And maybe because it's a 90s comic look, maybe because of how bulky it kinda looks to me, I don't know, but I just imagined it as being like a slow moving clunky suit that like allows Charles to walk but also doesn't save much time. Like he's walking like this, like he's like I don't know why I imagined that, but that's what I do. Also, the idea of Charles possibly wearing something made of metal to go up against Magneto in a fight, I thought that was pretty ridiculous. Although apparently this suit is like somehow like telepathically fueled, which I don't know, must be a Shi'ar thing. However, this never came up in the fight, the fact that his suit is maybe made of metal. I still don't really know for sure what this exosuit is made out of. At the end of the day, Charles technically won against Magnus, so maybe he knew something I don't know about this suit. Or maybe it's like metal, but like, I don't know, it's protected from certain abilities because it's made by the Shi'ar. It looks like metal. I don't know. Number 6, Marvel Now High Evolutionary. Everyone right now wants to talk about how great the High Evolutionary is, and I get it. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, he was a horrific villain, and Chukwudi Iwuji nailed the role completely. He really made for a good and true classic villain, but let's take a look at the High Evolutionary in the comics. What is he like? Well, he's about as ridiculous looking as the harebrained science schemes he ends up involved in. I can tell you that much. Well, pretty much every look he's had looks completely weird to me. I think one of the most strange for me personally is the one he wore during the 2012 Marvel Now event. Here he donned his normal metal suit, but with more added studs. Number 5, Calendar Man's Calendar Cape. I mean, you have to give him some points for super committing, but the Calendar Man cape is pretty objectively ridiculous, I would say. This costume at least also came with somewhat of an improved gimmick with more deadly weapons at his disposal as well. I believe the first appearance of the Calendar Cape was in issue 312 of Batman. Instead of him being a magician who is secretly a criminal, fond of riddles and various antics tied to days of the week, holidays, and even seasons, this time around Calendar Man was more fixated on the days of the week and the gods that they were named after, theming many of his crimes around them. Although, to be honest, if I were going to cosplay as Calendar Man, I would definitely wear a calendar cape. Number 4, Shocker. I mean, Shocker is just all around pretty ridiculous in the comics, I think. I think we can all agree on that, and his costume is no exception. Shocker basically looks like he took a sofa, gutted it, and turned it into his costume, which perhaps makes sense when you consider his abilities. He typically attempts to shock Spider-Man, so perhaps being insulated helps him to protect himself against his own shock-inducing weapons? I don't know. Still, you can't deny that even if there is some kind of practical use for this look, that he doesn't look absolutely ridiculous in it, because he definitely does. And honestly, I'm not really even sure if there's a practical use for this suit. I'm just trying to like help make it make sense. I want it to make sense, but I don't know if there is a reason for why he wears it. Number 3, Batman the Animated Series Condiment King. Condiment King is one of my all-time favorite villains because he simply is so ridiculous. What can I say? I'm a sucker for ridiculous dumb characters, especially villains. But him also being a villain armed to the teeth with condiments also means he's gonna look pretty ridiculous as he roams the town, squirting people with ketchup and mustard. That being said, his look in the animated series still takes the cake for one of the dumbest of all of his looks. Of course, this was done on purpose. You can tell pretty much everyone that has designed a Condiment King look is, you know, in on the joke. What I really love about this ridiculous look is the fact that he's literally wearing white underwear over his suit, which is just hilarious. Such a play on like ridiculous costumes in general. Costumes that that we think look great, but are still kind of ridiculous. Also white underwear when you're firing like condiments. Dangerous. Number 2, first MODOK. The very first appearance of MODOK was in Tales of Suspense issue number 94. This design is another created by Jack Kirby, which throughout the years has mainly remained unchanged. Sure, there have been different MODOKs and some alternate looks offered to us, but the main MODOK look has pretty much remained about the same. A suit that contains a giant head with little limbs fully sheathed in purple metal, and all seemingly floating and contained by a hover chair, which MODOK uses to get around. The implication here is that his little legs can no longer support the weight of his massive head and brain. The look is ridiculous, sure, but it really does help MODOK to stand out. And it's also this dumb look that has kind of helped to inform his character over the years, which also I love. While he often yearns to be as terrifying as the words that his name stands for implies, he also is just super ridiculous. Number 1, Codpiece's Codpiece. Codpiece, of course, is none other than a Doom Patrol villain because, well, I mean, look at this guy. His whole thing is weapons. A very specific weapon located in a very specific place. It's a big red gun that he wears on a harness, acting as a weaponized, well, codpiece. Why this costume? Why this gimmick? That's a good question. Because when he was in high school, he once asked a girl out and she turned him down for being quote unquote too small. Now, she didn't mean what he thought she did. She meant simply that he was too short. Misinterpreting this and seeking to prove himself, he became the criminal known as Codpiece. In the comics, I believe he was a one and done villain. I feel like I'd be nervous wearing a costume like this because if someone shot back at your weapon, the location of it might result in you being damaged in some pretty sensitive parts. So definitely makes sense that he was a one and done villain though. I mean, I feel like what else are you gonna do with this guy?